growing up in Derry, went to school, got your engineering degree, got your MSc in computer science. But what are those skills that are needed to do that job rather than just the qualification? Like
Oh,
what?
it is absolutely not just the bit of paper that you get from a school, college, or university institution. You know, that may well be the bit that opens the door, that allows you to step through. But building a career, having a successful career, is about so much more. It's about the skills that maybe you don't even realize that you're gathering on the way through. The ability to communicate, get your ideas across, the being able skills around being able to work in a team, and understand your role in the team, be it as a team member, a team leader, an influencer, whatever role you have within that team. And then just an ability to continuously learn. Like, I knew nothing about interest rate derivatives when I started. I knew nothing about the intricacies of buying and selling stocks and shares. You know, knew nothing about anything whenever you come through. But it's, there's the skill to know that you've got to have that ability to continuously learn throughout your career, to realize that the technology skills that you might start your career become obsolete, and you've got to be prepared, willing and able to continually refresh your tech skills, take on new knowledge the whole way through your career. And that's no different even today at this position in my career than it was, 30 odd years ago whenever I was starting out.
So you ended up then progressing through JP Morgan, working in Glasgow. How did then you make the journey to heading up Citi here in Northern Ireland? How did that all come about? Those aren't things that you plan as an 18-year-old, but how did that all come about?
Yeah, so I do. I think I've got a podcast of my own out there, and like people keep saying, "Well, stop talking about it and just get on and do it." A podcast and a book, and I talk about leadership in 8 words. 8 key lessons that I've learnt along my life, and one of those lessons is about balance, because while I was having, this super career, and it really was, like, I was at the top of my game in JP Morgan. I was running that group in Glasgow. I was back living here in Northern Ireland. We'd just had our third kid, but I was flying over to Glasgow on a Monday morning from here. I know, a very early adopter of telecommuting. I was supposed to work from home on a Wednesday, but so I'd fly home on a Tuesday, but more often than not, I'd fly up and down to the trading floor in London on a Wednesday, and then I'd fly back to Glasgow on a Thursday, home on a Friday, weekend reset, over to Glasgow on a Monday. And I can remember I woke up in a hotel in Glasgow, and I thought, "Flip me, what's happening in my life?" One dimension absolutely flying in terms of the career satisfaction, and everything that comes with that. But also realizing that whenever you're dead and gone, there's not a single person from JP Morgan's going to be standing at my graveside. It's your friends and family that are really important. And I went in to work that day, and I resigned.
Really?
Yeah. So this thing that had been
Yeah.
such a major part of me in terms of my career, my job satisfaction. 4 weeks later, it was like all over. And I came back and I took a job with Liberty. So Liberty had been one of the very early entrants into the tech sector here
Yeah.
in Northern Ireland after in fact, just before the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. They were here, and well established by that stage, and I got a job with them. And it was a super company, and my manager, a real giant in the tech sector in Northern Ireland, Willie Hamilton. I learned so much from him, lifelong friend and mentor. He realized that the job, and I realized that the job that I was doing wasn't the job that was right for me. And while I came back and I did that job at Liberty, I, within a year, was back out and I took on a role as the Chief Information Officer for the Grafton Group,
Oh yeah.
a very large recruitment
Hmm.
company, operated globally. And I went in there to rebuild their technology stack. and get it ready for a capital event. And that was a super journey. I learned so much in doing that, because up to then all my career had been in a big corporate environment where, truthfully, if you put a good story together around a project, you got the funding to go off and do it. You're able to crack on and do some really interesting things. The difference whenever you're working for that kind of SME type company, and the two shareholders, James and Ken, reminded me of this all the time. Whenever I went to them with my latest, greatest idea around how technology could revolutionize their business, they'd remind me that I was spending their kids' inheritance. So I learned some very valuable lessons around financial discipline, working for that organization. The importance that technology should not be done just for technology's sake, but actually, technology as a very useful tool to sort those business problems and to make a difference. But you have to get that return on the investment that's made in technology.
Yeah.
So I was about a year into that journey with the guys, having a really good time, and Citi opened up here, and I thought, oh, my timing just couldn't be worse. If I'd only just waited, 12 more months, then I could have, glided into Citi and been there for the journey. But I'd joined Ken and James. I was enjoying what I was doing there as the Chief Information Officer, and I said, no, I'll let it pass. So about 2 more years, so it was about 3 years into that role, and I'd watched Citi from afar, and by that stage they were maybe about 200 people within Citi. So 200 people in 2 years is a very impressive growth trajectory for any company. But I got the call from Citi and said, hey, we know what you did for JP Morgan in the centre in London. We've got this centre here. Would you be interested in coming and having a look at it? We're doing quite well, but our attrition levels are starting to tick up, and we'd just be interested to see what maybe you think of it. So I did. And I went along, and 200 people, beautiful office down Queen's Island, down on the what was then the Science Park and is now Catalyst. And I could see pretty much straight away, what was happening there. This super brand had come into the market, had promised super technology jobs, had attracted all the top talent into the organization, but the quality of the jobs in behind hadn't really followed in behind. So a lot of dissatisfaction with all these really talented engineers who'd been recruited. And so they were cycling back out again going, oh, let me, I promised a great job there, but it's not it's not living up to the mark. Yeah. So I could see that. And I said to them, look, here's my assessment. And they said, well, do you fancy coming and being part of maybe trying to fix that? And trying to stem the attrition and help to boost the growth of the organization. And I said, sure, why not? So they gave me a job, a made up job. They called me the business unit manager. And for the quick-witted among your audience, it's a very unfortunate acronym in that they took me on to be the Belfast bum, so I went to Citi and put together a slide deck that I took around the corridors of power in New York and in London around what needed to be done. And it's the same. Throughout my career, I've met a lot of inward investors to Northern Ireland, and talked about the success of companies like Citi in terms of how they've managed to build and to grow to what they are today. And it's a very simple thing. Whenever these centres are built, there's great ambition around what you're going to do with them, but there's also great resistance within the organizations that they're being spun out from around, they're never going to be able to do those jobs over there. So let's send them the low-level jobs. Let's send them the jobs that aren't that strategic or that important. And it really misses the point around what you get by building a tech center here, and that access to super talented, great engineers, full of real ideas around how things could be better. So instead of what was happening, which was getting all of the low-level jobs all disconnected, No two jobs the same. It was a very simple strategy that says instead of having 10% of everything, let's have 100% of
Yeah.
something. Build a proper team, top to bottom, proper leadership, career paths for the engineers, a real sense of ownership in terms of the platforms out there, and really that transition from that kind of fragmented singleton type model to one that looked much more like a managed service, provided the foundation for what then
Mm.
proved to be a hugely
Yeah.
successful growth trajectory for that company. By the time I left, there were 2,000 Citi people that had grown it from 200 to 2,000. Subsequently, it's gone on to 4,000. It is like a real success story around what can be done in terms of building nearshore technology
Yeah.
centers.